The town believed fear was permanent. That once a man was broken, he stayed broken. The saloon had seen it happen many times before. Proud men walked in, heads high, and walked out with nothing left but dust on their boots and silence in their eyes. So when an old farmer stepped into town that evening, bleeding, tired, yet standing straight, no one thought he mattered. They laughed. They whispered. They assumed his story was already finished. But what they did not understand was this: some men are not walking toward the end. Some men are walking toward judgment. Every scar on his body carried a choice he had made. Every slow step echoed with years of refusal. He was not there to beg. He was not there to fight. He was there because truth had nowhere else to stand. And sometimes, when one man stands, the whole town is forced to listen. The story dive in tell us in the comment you are watching form. The town of Red Willow sat where the prairie finally gave up and turned to dust. It was not much to look at. A crooked line of wooden buildings, a hitching post worn smooth by restless horses, and one saloon that stood just a little taller than the rest, as if reminding everyone where power truly lived. Men passed through Red Willow for one reason only: land. And land, out here, was never taken gently. By late afternoon, the sun hung low and cruel, baking the street until the air shimmered. Inside the saloon, the heat mixed with smoke and sour whiskey. A piano wheezed through a tune no one listened to. Dice clattered. Laughter rose and fell in sharp bursts, the kind that came easy when you were certain nothing could touch you. That certainty cracked when the door creaked open. At first, no one looked. The door always creaked. But then a shadow stretched across the floor, long and unsteady, and one by one, conversations softened. An old man stood in the doorway, framed by sunlight so bright it nearly erased him. He did not step inside right away. For a moment, he simply stood there, as if gathering strength he could not afford to waste. His hat was pulled low, its brim frayed and sun-bleached. His coat hung loose on his frame, darkened in places by dried blood. One sleeve was torn clean through. Beneath it, his arm trembled. He took a step. The sound of his boot against the wooden floor echoed louder than it should have. Not because the room was quiet, but because everyone felt it. The step dragged, slightly off balance. He reached out and steadied himself against the doorframe before moving again. "Lord have mercy," someone muttered. Another voice followed, amused. "Looks like the land finally fought back." A few men laughed. The old man did not look at them. His eyes moved slowly across the room, pale and distant, like someone counting exits without meaning to use them. He was tall, or had been once. Even now, his back remained straight despite the pain that bent his shoulders. His beard was gray and matted, stiff with blood along one side of his face. A deep cut above his brow had swollen shut. He walked toward the bar. Each step cost him something. It showed in the way his jaw tightened, in the way his breathing came shallow and careful. A thin line of blood slipped from his sleeve and dotted the floor behind him, dark marks blooming against the wood like bruises. The bartender noticed first. A heavy man with tired eyes and hands that had cleaned too many messes. He frowned, wiping a rag across the counter. "You best not bleed on the whiskey," he said. "Costs more than you look like you can pay." The old man stopped at the bar. His hand rested on the edge, knuckles white, fingers stiff. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but steady. "Water." That word did something strange to the room. Water was free. Whiskey was not. And free things, in Red Willow, always came with opinions. "Water?" A man near the dice table scoffed. "You walk in here lookin' half dead and ask for water?" The old man nodded once. "Yes." Silence followed. Not full silence, but the kind that thins the air. The bartender hesitated, then reached for a tin cup. He filled it from a barrel and slid it across the bar. The old man wrapped both hands around the cup as if it might vanish. He drank slowly. Some of the water spilled down his beard, tracing clean lines through the dried blood. His shoulders eased just a fraction. "Where you comin' from?" someone asked. No answer. "You a farmer?" another voice said. Only farmers look that stubborn after gettin' beaten. That earned more laughter. The old man set the empty cup down. His breathing had grown uneven now. Whatever strength carried him into town was slipping away. He leaned harder against the bar, eyes closing for a second too long. That was when a man in the corner spoke. "You hear about that place up north," he said casually, rolling dice between his fingers. "The farm that didn't want to sell?" The laughter faded. A few heads turned. The bartender stopped wiping the counter. "They say the owner was warned," the man continued. "Told real clear what happens when a man thinks he can stand alone." The old man's eyes opened. Slowly, he turned toward the voice. For the first time since entering the saloon, something changed in his expression. Not anger, not fear. Recognition. "You got a name, old man?" the dice man asked. The old man shook his head. "Names don't matter today." That unsettled them. Men like these understood shouting, threats, and violence. Calm acceptance felt wrong. Dangerous. "World's changin'," the dice man said. "Best learn when to let go." The old man closed his eyes again. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before. "I already learned." A chair scraped back. A younger man stood. Broad shoulders. Clean coat. A smile that carried no warmth. He stepped closer, boots heavy against the floor, hand resting near his gun, not drawing it, just reminding everyone it existed. "Problem is," he said, "lessons ain't finished till everyone understands them." The room tightened. The old man did not move. He did not reach for a weapon he did not have. He did not beg. He stood there, bloodied and still, like a fence post driven deep into stubborn ground. "I didn't come for trouble," he said. "I came because I had nowhere else to stand." Laughter returned, sharper now. "That land of yours," the younger man said. "It ain't yours any more." "It was my father's," the old man replied. "And his before him." "That don't matter." "You burned my barn," the old man said. No one denied it. "You drove my cattle into the ravine. Left me on the road thinkin' I wouldn't make it back." The younger man smiled. "But you did." "I did. And you still came here." The old man lifted his eyes. "Because runnin' don't change what's right." The younger man shoved him. Not hard enough to knock him down. Just enough to remind him who held the power. The old man staggered, caught himself on the bar, breath breaking free in a quiet sound of pain. Blood dripped faster now, tapping the floor. "Get up straight," the younger man said. "A man only kneels when he's prayin'." The old man stayed where he was. "I already prayed," he said. "On the road." The room held its breath. Then, faint at first, a sound reached them. Hooves. Slow. Measured. Certain. The younger man paused. "You hear that?" The old man closed his eyes. When he opened them, there was something there that had not been there before. Relief. The hooves stopped just outside the saloon. And the door began to open. The saloon door swung open with a tired groan, pushed wide by the wind and something heavier than it. Cold air rushed inside, carrying dust and the sharp smell of leather and horse sweat. The piano player's fingers froze mid-note. Dice stopped rolling. Even the laughter died where it stood. A rider filled the doorway. For a moment, the sunlight behind her made her nothing more than a dark shape. Then she stepped forward, and the room seemed to shrink around her. She wore a long coat, road-worn but clean, its hem brushing her boots. A rifle was slung across her front, not raised, not hidden. Simply there. Confident. Familiar. Dangerous in the quiet way. Her eyes moved through the saloon slowly, measuring men the way hunters measure distance. No rush. No fear. They found the old man on one knee. "Papa," she said. The word struck harder than any gunshot. The old farmer lifted his head. His mouth twitched into something like a smile. "Took you long enough," he murmured. She crossed the room without haste. No one stopped her. No one wanted to be the first to move. She knelt beside him, setting the rifle carefully against her shoulder as if it were just another tool. Her hands were steady as she touched his arm, checking the wound, pressing cloth against the blood. "You shouldn't have walked this far," she said quietly. "I didn't walk," he replied. "I stood." She nodded, as if that explained everything. Then she rose and turned to face the room. Up close, she was younger than some had expected. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Dust clung to her boots, and sun had darkened her skin. Her eyes, however, carried something older. Something earned. The younger man scoffed, forcing a grin. "You his daughter?" "I am." He glanced at the rifle. "You plannin' on usin' that?" "Only if someone forgets how to listen," she said. A few men shifted. Chairs creaked. The bartender swallowed hard. The dice man leaned back. "This don't concern you, miss." She met his gaze. "You burned my family's barn. That makes it mine." The younger man laughed, louder than before. "You think walkin' in here with a gun changes anything?" She tilted her head slightly. "No," she said. "I think what you already did changes everything." She reached into her coat slowly. Several hands moved toward gun belts. She ignored them, pulling out folded papers instead. She laid them flat on the bar. "Deed," she said. "Filed proper. Signed. Witnessed. Land's still ours." The bartender leaned closer, squinting. His face changed when he recognized the markings. Murmurs rippled through the room. Paper meant law. Even in places where law bent, it still mattered who held it. The younger man's smile thinned. "Paper burns. So do barns," she replied. "Funny thing is, one of those gets remembered." She turned her attention back to her father. He was breathing hard now, exhaustion finally catching him. She slipped an arm around him and helped him sit against the bar. "They didn't know," he said quietly. "I know," she answered. She stood again, this time resting her hand on the rifle sling. "Not threatening. Just reminding. My name is Clara Boone," she said. The effect was immediate. Someone cursed under his breath. Another man stood and quietly moved toward the back wall. "Boone," the bartender whispered. Clara nodded. "My mother was a Boone. My uncle wore a badge before this town decided it didn't need one." The younger man's jaw tightened. "Boones are finished." "Some are," she said. "Some learned when to stop running." She stepped closer to him. The distance between them closed to only a few feet. "You hurt my father," she said evenly. "You stole what wasn't yours. And you did it thinkin' no one would come." The younger man sneered. "You ain't the law." "No," Clara agreed. "But I brought it with me." She tapped the papers. "Sheriff in Cedar Ridge signed warrants this morning. He'll be here by sunrise." The room shifted. Sunrise meant chains. Sunrise meant names written down. "You lyin'," the younger man said, but doubt crept into his eyes. "Wait and see," Clara replied. She turned away from him. That was the moment he made his mistake. His hand twitched toward his gun. Clara's rifle was in her hands before the thought finished forming. Not aimed. Just ready. The sound of the lever sliding back cut through the saloon like a blade. "Don't," she said. "One word. Come. Final." The younger man froze. Sweat beaded on his brow. He looked around, searching for backup. He found none. The dice man slowly raised his hands. "This ain't worth dyin' over." "No," Clara said. "It ain't." She helped her father to his feet. He leaned heavily on her, but his eyes were clear now. Proud. "We're leavin'," she said. No one stopped them. As they reached the door, the younger man spoke, voice low and bitter. "This ain't over." Clara paused without turning. "It is," she said. "You just don't know it yet." They stepped into the cool evening air. Clara guided her father onto a waiting horse and mounted behind him, steadying him as they rode away. Inside the saloon, no one spoke. The balance had shifted, and the town felt it. They rode in silence. The prairie stretched wide and empty, moonlight spilling over the land like pale water. The horse moved carefully beneath them, as if it understood the weight it carried. Clara kept one arm firm around her father, the other steady on the reins. Every uneven breath he took echoed in her chest. "You didn't have to come," he said at last. "Yes," she replied. I did. He gave a quiet, tired chuckle. You always were stubborn. I learned from you. When the farmhouse came into view, Clara's jaw tightened. The barn was nothing but a blackened frame against the sky. Its beams collapsed inward like broken ribs. The fence lay torn apart, posts snapped and dragged across the dirt. The land looked wounded, but not defeated. Inside, she settled him onto the table and lit a lamp. Her movements were practiced, careful. She cleaned his wounds, stitched where she had to, and said nothing while he gritted his teeth. Pain was familiar to both of them. So was silence. "They'll come," he said once she finished. "Yes," Clara answered. "But not tonight." She sat with her rifle across her knees long after he slept. The wind whispered through the ruins outside. Every sound mattered. Every shadow earned her attention. Before dawn, hooves broke the quiet. Not one horse. Many. Clara rose, calm and ready. She stepped onto the porch as lantern light approached along the road. Riders emerged from the dark, coats heavy, badges catching the glow. The sheriff dismounted first, his face set hard. "Clara Boone," he said. "You were right." She nodded. "He usually is." The old farmer stepped out beside her, leaning on a cane she had carved in the night. The sheriff tipped his hat. "We'll take it from here," he said. "Warrants are signed. Statements will be taken." As the sky lightened, wagons rolled toward town carrying men who had expected another quiet morning. Chains replaced confidence. Silence replaced laughter. By midday, word spread. Back at the farm, neighbors arrived one by one. Some brought wood. Some brought food. Others brought only their hands. Together, they raised new posts and set fresh beams where ash still clung to the earth. The old farmer stood among them, offering quiet direction. Clara watched from the fence, the rifle finally resting against the post. That evening, as the sun sank low, her father joined her. "You think it's finished?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "No. But it started right." The wind moved through the grass, steady and patient. And for the first time in a long while, the land felt alive again. The days that followed did not feel loud. There were no speeches, no celebrations, no sudden change in the sky. Change came the way it always did on the prairie, quietly, through work. Wood replaced ash. New fence posts rose where the old ones had burned, driven deep into the stubborn earth. Fresh boards took the place of charred beams. Each hammer strike echoed across the land like a promise that had finally found its voice. The old farmer healed slowly. Each morning he walked a little farther, leaning less on the cane. He spent long hours standing at the edge of the field, watching the land as if it were breathing again. Clara never rushed him. Some wounds needed more than time. They needed proof. One afternoon, the sheriff returned alone. He dismounted near the fence, hat in his hands. "It's done," he said. "They won't be comin' back." The old farmer nodded once. That was enough. The sheriff turned to Clara. "Town could use someone like you." She shook her head gently. "Town's got enough people now. It just needed reminding." That evening, father and daughter sat on the porch as the sky burned gold and red. The prairie wind moved through the grass, steady and sure. "I thought strength meant standin' alone," the old farmer said quietly. "Turns out, it's knowin' when to let someone stand with you." Clara rested her hand over his. "You taught me that," she said. In the distance, cattle grazed again. The fence held. The land endured. What had been taken was not just returned. It was renewed. And the farm stood, not as a warning, but as proof. Seasons changed the way they always had. Spring softened the ground. Summer pulled green from the soil. By autumn, the field stood full again, bending under their own weight. The farm no longer looked wounded. It looked seasoned, marked by fire and time, yet standing stronger for it. People in town spoke differently now. Not louder. Not kinder. Just more careful. The saloon still opened its doors each evening, but laughter no longer ruled the room. Men remembered how quickly balance could shift. How easily silence could be broken. The old farmer never returned to the saloon. He didn't need to. Each morning, He walked the land, steady and unhurried. He touched fence posts as he passed them, checking their strength, smiling faintly when they held firm. He spoke less than before, but when he did, his words carried weight. Clara stayed longer than she planned. At first, it was just until he healed. Then until the fence was finished. Then until the first harvest came in. The prairie had a way of convincing people to remain once they remembered why they belonged. Some evenings, neighbors gathered at the edge of the field. They talked about crops, weather, and small worries that felt manageable again. Children ran between the posts, laughing. The land listened, the way it always had. One night, as the sun fell low, the old farmer sat beside Clara on the porch. "I used to think this land was all I had to leave behind," he said. "Turns out it wasn't." Clara looked out across the field. "Land remembers who stands for it," she replied. He nodded. "And who stands with it?" When winter came, the farm endured. Snow settled against the fences, and smoke curled from the chimney each morning. Inside, warmth lived where fear once had. The town of Red Willow did not become perfect. It never would. But it became quieter in the ways that mattered. Cruelty learned to hide. Greed learned to hesitate. And sometimes that was enough. The farm remained. Not because of force. Not because of fear. But because one man refused to bow, and one woman refused to ride away. And the land remembered both. Stories like this are not about the past. They are about what still happens when ordinary people choose dignity over fear. Somewhere, right now, someone is standing where they feel alone, wondering if it's worth holding on. If this story moved you, share where you are watching from and what part stayed with you the most. Because every comment, every voice, is proof that standing for what's right is never wasted. The prairie remembers. And so do we.